This is going to be fantastic. What is up, y'all? Kevin Kuhn here from Athlete Factors, here with my good friend, Ambrose Coleman. This is the Athlete Factors Thanksgiving special. And I have a feeling it's going to be very special.
Hey, listen. He can hardly contain himself right now. Okay, so
it's going to be great.
It may be a bumpy ride initially, but then it'll smooth out. So just hang in there.
Hang in there. You're gonna be glad you did. You're gonna appreciate it. So, because it's a special, and because it will be special, we got some questions sent in. We've got some callers waiting to get live with us here to ask their unique questions. We've got some high school athletes, we've got some adult athletes, we've got some coaches. Kind of a nice mix.
And then you have some, kind of questions, or not questions, but some things you want to cover as well.
Yeah. Going into not only Thanksgiving, this is actually going to come out after Thanksgiving, so sorry, but for the holidays, yeah. I mean, if people don't have Thanksgiving on Thursday, then it'll be right on time.
Actually, that is true. Thanksgiving no longer happens only on Thanksgiving Day.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it's really good info leading into Christmas, the New Year, and holidays going forward. Some good nutrition advice.
Very sound.
Yeah. So, should we start with that, or should we keep the callers waiting?
Hold on, let me continue and put them on pause. Go ahead and keep them waiting.
Alrighty, so the whole idea of ingesting an excessive amount of calories during the holiday season, like I get it, like everybody wants to eat as much food as they can because it's delicious, it's made with love, but that tends to come with some potentially weight enhancing effects, let's say. So some interesting data came out fairly recently showing that the amount of calories that people think they're ingesting on a holiday varies somewhere between 4,000 to 5,000. That's what they think they're getting. The truth of the matter is you're probably only ingesting about 1,000 calories over your maintenance level. Part of that is because you're probably not having a breakfast or a heavy breakfast because you're trying to save room for that one big meal. So even if you are, pigging out and then having dessert, you're probably only getting 2,500 to 3,500 calories in a sitting.
Yeah. It's so psychological.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, sometimes though, I'm just thinking about what you were saying about only getting 1,000 calories over is, I could see that. I never thought about it until you mentioned that, but I can see that being a reality because you know how sometimes you're like, all right, on your birthday when we go to Texas Day, Brazil, you're like, hey man, I'm not eating all day so that I can just save room and, go hard, when it's come time for our reservations.
Take full advantage.
Yeah, full advantage. And then, you eat those first few plates and then you're like, oh man, I'm stuffed. But you haven't really eaten much all day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it essentially evens out because you're still getting roughly close to your total calorie need for the day. So, but the thing is, even if you go over, the easiest way to stay on track, if you are trying to stick relatively close to maintenance, and whether that means physically tracking your calories or going through more of an intuitive eating strategy, eat a little bit less on the days leading up to the holiday meal, or on the back end, just eat a little bit less on the following days. And if you're only 1,000 calories over, it's not that difficult to cut out 330 calories the 3 days after Thanksgiving, right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Come Monday morning, you're going to weigh exactly the same as you did the previous Monday before Thanksgiving. So enjoy the holiday. eat what you want, spend time with your friends and family, have a good time, but go into it with a little bit of a strategy. Try to go into it with maybe a little calorie deficit. Doesn't have to be huge. And then if you don't do that, then on the back end, just come in a little under a few days, and no need to throw in the towel and say, all right, I've screwed up. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna do this anymore. Like, keep on working.
Right. 1 or 2 bad days of eating is not going to throw the whole thing out of sync.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. It happens. Thanksgiving happens 1 time a year, so just let it rip.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
So that's essentially that, and yeah. Are we ready for our first caller?
Oh yeah. Okay. Great.
All right. Let's get him on the line.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Caller number 1. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, and I have some really, really good questions to ask.
Excellent. Go for it.
Okay. My name is Andy.
Hey, Andy.
Hey, how are you? And I'm a 60-year-old triathlete, currently rocking neck hardware, well, in the form of a brace.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a long story, too long to go into detail right now.
Gotcha.
We'll have to share it later.
Okay. What's your question, sir?
My first question is, how long have you two been dating?
Thank you for that question. You know what? Go ahead and ask all your questions, because I want to hang up the phone on you after that. We'll answer that, but what are your other questions?
All right. So, is there a magic number for time in periodization phase, or is there random better?
Okay, that's a good question. And what's the last one?
Oh, you want to know all my questions, right?
Yeah, I just want to know them all.
Cool. All right, what are the signs an athlete is ready to move to a higher level in progression? And wait for it, I have one more brilliant question, because I am a brilliant man.
True.
Yeah. When and how do you tell an athlete the current goal or goals are unrealistic, either too high or too low?
Awesome. Well, Andy, thank you for the call. Click. Alrighty, so I think what he meant with regards to the first question is, when did Ambrose and I start working together? So that's how I'm going to answer the question. I moved down here the summer of 2012, specifically to work with Ambrose, so I'd say our relationship started then. Would you agree?
I would agree.
So we had a little bit of a phone relationship before then.
Yeah, we had a phone courtship. We were courting each other, filling each other out on the
wise, right?
Yeah.
Professionally.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
What was the next question?
All right. How long have you two been? No. When? Let's start with this. When and how do you tell an athlete that their current goal or goals are either too high or too low?
Gotcha. So a little bit of that I think is subjective, just because we can't fully know what anyone's potential is. But when you've worked with an athlete for a little while, when you've seen what they're capable of, when you see how hard they're willing to work, I think you can kind of get a general idea of what they're capable of. And then from there, you plan out their goals accordingly. So I like when people pick lofty goals to go for something that most other people assume that they just can't achieve. Like, I like when people are like, no, like there can only be one person who wins state, and I want to be that one person. Like, the thing is, like, my running coach in college said there can only be one person who finishes first. So everybody else after that, sorry, but your goal should be to finish first, right? So, yeah, that's a tough one. What do you think, Coach?
I think with a goal, an athlete that has a very, very high, lofty goal, as you said, I think boy, that's a good client right there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because that client is full of motivation. Their motivation factor is high. And so I would rather have an athlete that is highly motivated and that I have to, kind of, course correct than to have someone I have to get, spur them and say, hey, let's get going, right?
Trying to motivate somebody at every training session.
It's a beat, right? Yeah. I mean, now obviously you can add whatever motivation you need to, and your motivation levels are different. But when you have to say, hey, let's showing up today. Hey, don't be late. Just all these little side factors.
Yeah.
I think that's one that you're like, man, I'd rather just kick them.
Yeah.
But an athlete that has high goals, that they're highly driven, and you can work with that a lot better. Now, I do think that there are a lot of there could be a lot of room for you have to be very strict and very clear about what you want them to accomplish. I do think there's a lot of subjectivity there. So like you're very subjective because like you said, you really don't know the limits of the boundaries that athlete has. And because you can't measure heart, you can't measure determination, a lot of these things. But I think now it's easier compared to where it used to be, say 10 to 15 to 20 years ago, because we can collect data on athletes. So we can start to create baselines, then start to project, target zones for them or training numbers. Yeah. So I think it's a little bit easier in that regard for us. But ideally though, you don't know that limit is. So I think for us, our goal is to always try to push them beyond where they think they can go anyway.
For sure.
In most senses.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. If you're not picking lofty goals, then, I mean, I joke around with some of the people I train, and I ask them, like, are you an athlete or are you a half-lead? Like, are you trying to go for it, or are you okay just being mediocre? And if you don't have lofty goals, that's fine. Don't try to achieve something lofty. But like you said, it's not as fun to work with people who are like, you motivate me to do something. Like, well, that I can't do that for you. I can help you reach whatever goals you have, and hopefully you're picking something that's that perhaps seems impossible.
Right.
But if you're taking incremental steps and progressing towards that, maybe you won't reach it, but you'll probably surprise yourself with how good you can be, or what goals you do check off on the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, we talk to, youth athletes about this all the time is, and some of these interns that come in and they're talking about, oh, hey, I don't know what I want to do. I think I just want to be a strength coach, right? And so, but I also kind of maybe wanted to be a physical therapist or, and they don't quite know where they want to go. And so I always tell them, I'm like, hey, listen, just go for the highest mark, and then you can always step down, so to speak. And I don't mean that in the sense of, hey, that if you have, just your undergrad, or you're just a strength and conditioning coach with a graduate degree, that you're somehow less than, say, with a DPT or, something like that. I'm not saying that. Yeah. All I'm saying is aim high as you can, and then you may get there or close to it and figure out, hey, no, this is really where I want to be. Because when you're 17, 18, 19, it's very difficult to figure out like what you really want to do for the rest of your life.
For sure.
And so if I guess my logic for that is, if you're aiming high, right, if either you're going to get it or you won't get it, but you'll be much higher than what you're initially, thought of just being this.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll have better tools.
Yeah.
You'll be better educated and prepared and more experienced to change course.
Correct. So. And it's so much easier to stay in school than to, get your undergrad and then stop for 2 years and then start back up and then like, oh no, man, now I need to go get my, and I just think that it's if it's possible, then go through like a continuum instead of just saying, hey, I'm gonna break it up into chunks. I'm gonna get out and start making money. And 9 times out of 10, what'll happen is either you will get stuck doing something that you really don't want to do, or you'll get out of the field because you're frustrated by what you can't do currently, right? And so it's kind of it can get tricky at that point.
For sure.
I think so.
Hope that answers that part of your question, Andy.
Yeah, and well, I guess we didn't talk about it here. Well, I guess we did. I mean, that pretty much covers it, though.
Yeah.
I think as just a point of unrealistic, I think that most of the time, we do not aim high enough. I think so. Even if it seems like it's a BHAG, like a big, hairy, audacious goal, right? That is really effective to have. And so I think that most of the time we don't suffer with unrealistic type goals. I think we suffer from not aiming high enough. That's kind of what I would say.
Yeah. That reminds me of one thing. When I was in high school and I was on the high school track team, and we were doing preseason stuff. We were running upstairs in the school. We didn't have a track, so we had to bus to a local college and do our training there, or we just did it there at the school, which was on, concrete floored hallways and running up and down stairs. And I remember all right, whatever the coach has me do, whatever the workout is, everybody's doing that. That's not going to be enough for me. So when we finished, it was okay, coach, can I do another? And there were times where he would say, yeah, sure. How many more can you do? Let's see.
Right.
And there were other times where he was like, no, you're done. And I was I never really understood that, but now I understand.
Right.
But at the time, I remember, if it was 5 or 6 reps, and I was all right, can I do another one? Can I do another one? Can I do another one? And then, as long as I could maintain my speed, he was yeah, let's get some more in. And then I remember a couple guys saying one guy in particular, he was man, Kevin, you're such an overachiever. You're making us all look bad. Why don't you quit that? And I was I thought about that, and I was so you don't want me to train more because nobody's telling you not to. Nobody's telling you have to do more. And nobody's telling you you didn't do a good job. And I thought about that a lot, and I was okay, am I an overachiever, or am I just trying to be an achiever? I don't think there was an over aspect to it. I was just no, I need to do more. I can do more. So I think knowing whether your athletes can do more might help you determine, if their goals are appropriate for them.
Well, I think you kind of touched on a couple things there, because part of Andy's questions was that unrealistic type goals, but periodization, and then also when is it time to progress an athlete to their next phase. So yeah, I think
we transition into that part. So
yeah, because that's kind of a periodization.
Yeah.
When your coach said, hey, listen,
segue.
Yeah, can you do more? Yeah, okay, cool. How many can you do?
Yeah.
Right? There's the interplay between coach and athlete, which is actually how there's still a lot of that needs to be involved in the training today. But I think initially that's really what coaching was about, was that two-way communication.
For sure. No, I totally agree. So yeah, with regards to periodization, should it be random, or is there a specific number? It depends. I think that's the best answer. Depends on your goal. It depends on which variables you're setting up your periodization around. Are you focusing on building strength, building power, building speed, building endurance? So I think it depends on all of those things. But then, like you said, how is the communication between the coach and the athlete? That's going to determine.
Yeah. I think one of the things I want to get back to that, but I think you really touched on something that's really important that I think gets left out of training manuscripts all the time, and that's the relationship factor. You know, between coach and athlete, and I think that knowing that the way you start to know more about your athlete is when you start to know and relate to your athlete. You know, and so that's and the more they trust you, the more they're willing to do things that may not seem like it's a logical step, or you're saying, hey, turn your foot this way instead of that way, you know, or do the lift this way, you know, hey, you need to recover, when everything in their mind says, hey, no, I need to run more. You know, and so I think that when that trust factor is there, then it becomes a lot smoother to lay out, you know, the variables of training.
For sure.
Yeah.
The other thing, and this is a little bit of an aside, but I think this was probably about 10 years ago when this study came out, but it was a comparison of more sedentary individuals. In other words, people who weren't training intensely for a specific competitive goal, let's say. They weren't athletes. And they put them through a periodized resistance training program and a more randomized training program, and the results were exactly the same. So at the end of the day, I think like you can't do worse having solid programming. You know, like if you're just going into the gym and doing whatever you want, like, well, that's better than not going to the gym. But going into the gym with a plan, it's like that's not going to be worse than going into the gym without a plan. So if you if you can do something periodized and programmed, like it's probably going to be the best. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too is that man, I agree with that. I feel like that I think what differentiates it for people, or from athlete to athlete, because I think it is from athlete to athlete. I think ideally, if you say, hey, I want to create adaptation, I can create adaptation by getting someone to follow a systemized plan. So what I think that has to happen first is neurologically, there has to be some accommodation to get off that random, because I think we're all on the random model anyway, from a neurological standpoint. And so to get off that neurological model, you have to have neurological accommodation to say, hey, you're kind of like universally, generally, you know, adapting. And so what we're going to do is we want to feed you a specific dosage of neurological stimuli. Okay? Once you adapt to this and it's consistent, then you will start to formulate an up-regulation to adaptation based on that type of strategy. Now, if you give them, they're already on a random, you know, function mode, which is what I believe most people are on anyway, and you put them on to a higher degree and a higher density of randomized training, okay, then they're going to create that adaptation to that stimuli as well.
Gotcha.
Right? Because, I mean, you think about it, it's like most of your training, let's take a running program, for instance. You know, you're training for, you know, 24 to 28 weeks, 26 weeks, somewhere in there, if you're training for a marathon, let's just say. Okay? So that first year that you adapt, and then the third year that you adapt to those training programs and training runs are going to be completely different in that third year, because your neurological system had to build up a tolerance level to a couple variables. But once it got on that routine, that periodization, when we start in, you know, say April, May, and you run around to December, boom, this is what it's going to be like. It starts to get used to that and it respond to that. But if you were running inconsistently, it will adapt to that too, right? Because it's a highly adaptive system, so it'll adapt to anything you give it on a consistent basis. If it's structured, highly structured, with good density or randomized with good density?
Mm.
And I know that's probably not a question, answer that most people would want to know.
Yeah.
They want to, but that's a very complex question.
Yeah.
And I think that's a more.
Yeah, that's the body has to adapt. Like it can't. It will progress or regress, but even regression is an adaptation to be more efficient to what you're stressing the body. So it's constantly adapting.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
can't not. So, yeah.
And actually, the problem happens when it no longer can adapt. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's when we start to have problems. It starts to break down. Your immune system can no longer adapt. Your digestive system can no longer adapt.
Yep.
Your emotional system can no longer adapt, right?
Yeah.
And then we start to have dis-ease, right? So yeah.
Shoot. Well, do we have any more callers on the line?
Oh, we have
lines are full.
Yeah, we have plenty of callers.
Lines
there.
are full.
But Andy did a good job, though. Okay.
Excellent start, Andy. Happy birthday.
Yeah. 60.
60.
Oh, man.
Big 6-0.
Hit that 6-0. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Trey O.
That's right.
I don't know. It sounds right in my
sounded
mind.
good.
Okay, cool. All right, so we got Jay.
Jay.
Yeah.
Say less.
Say less.
Hashtag say less. Jay.
And Tupac is still alive, Jay.
Yes, he is.
Yes. High school athlete.
Yep. What's Jay have to say?
Jay asked the question. What make you really coach? Okay? And do you love it as much as you say?
These are questions.
That's a brilliant question, man.
These are questions I wish someone had asked, or questions I wish I had asked to strength coaches early on in my career. Because that would have been very useful information. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention it, but for those of you who can see this, just wanted to remind y'all, this is a classic. This is OG.
Yeah, that really is.
For those who can't see it, I just want you guys to know that I am MF Strong.
Hey man,
You can't buy those.
You cannot. They're out of print.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
on.
That's a collector's item.
Yeah, it's a collector's item. That's what it is. Yeah.
So, yes, please ice me. So.
2 chains.
So what makes me coach?
Yeah, what makes I think what he's really asking is what makes you want to coach.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So
and
do I actually believe that?
when you do create the answer, do you really believe that?
Do I mean it?
Yeah, do you mean that?
That's a good question.
That's a very good question.
I think at the end of the day, I love teaching, but I don't like being so tied to the classroom and tied to a textbook.
Actually, that's not entirely accurate. You know what you don't like?
Tell me.
Administration.
That's what I meant. That's exactly right. I don't like having a boss.
Yeah. You don't. Why would you?
I don't know. Plenty of people like that.
And the regulation by the state, by this, by someone else's ideology to say, hey, you shouldn't do it this way. We want to make sure everybody does it this way.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely true. So I love coaching because I love being able to interact with people. That's in a way that's not just, hey, can you email this person? Hey, can you get me this? Hey, can you do this job so I can do my job? Like, I like being able to interact at a level where I know what's going on with somebody in their personal life, but then I also know what their goals are, and then I can help them progress towards those goals. So, do I love it as much as I say I do? Okay, there's a few things that I don't love.
Okay.
I don't love waking up at 4:30. I don't love that. But this morning, And on Monday, so 2 days ago and then today, I had all in my office, all at once, 4 or 5 clients at between 5:30 and 6:30, basically. I love that. And they all love it too. So
Right.
like that makes it so fun. Like, but as far as like waking up at 4:30, I rarely hit the snooze and like, ugh, like I hate this. Like I just
Is it this time of year or is it just the time? It wouldn't matter what
that
time of
rarely
year.
happens.
Oh, okay.
I don't even like. I just my alarm goes off. I get up and I get up and go to work. Like it's normal now. It's not.
Right.
But
Initially.
and yeah, and there's still times where I'm like, man, I wish I could still be asleep right now.
Right.
But like that's the only thing. Like I love every other aspect of it.
You know the 2 things that I would say that I dislike about, you know, part of it is, or this part of our field is, I don't necessarily love the fact of running a business and collecting finances and talking about money.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
don't like that.
either you want this or you don't, right?
Yeah.
Like, and here's what it costs, and let's just be done with it, right?
Yeah.
That part of it I don't like. I've had to really mature and grow into that.
Yeah.
And so, but that's not the fun part of it, right?
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, right?
Mhm.
I'm just not wired that way. Like I really I want to.
I don't like talking money.
Yeah, I want to talk science. I don't
Yeah.
want to talk money, right? And finances and
Yep.
you know that kind of stuff. But I mean, if we don't do it, then you know
You don't stay in business.
you don't stay in business. That's exactly
And then
it.
you can't talk science.
And then you can't talk science, right? Exactly. And then you will have administration,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
That's what that is.
That's
And
true.
then I think the other thing that I really don't like, I would say, not the hours. It's just the time frame of. It would be nice to, you know, the perfect magical unicorn day for me would be to wake up at 5, read for an hour, go work out, come eat breakfast, start seeing clients. Right?
Be done by noon.
Yeah, so I don't, so, yeah, exactly. So I don't necessarily mind getting up early,
Yeah.
even if it was at 4, you know, for me,
Yeah.
right? But what I don't like is the fact that, for me, is that I have to start work so early. And if I had my choice, then I wouldn't start work so early.
I hear you.
Yeah, so I
Waking up early is not it, but
Yeah.
starting work early.
right, because
Yeah.
I would love, because you know what I love about being up so early is that no one else is up that early, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's so quiet, it's
Yeah.
so serene, and so like I can really just, I'm an introvert, so I can
Yeah.
you know totally be to myself at that time. But
Focus on
yeah,
whatever you got. And
yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah, so
I
that's
appreciate
it.
that.
Yeah, so yeah, but I will say this for Jay that you know, obviously you have seen Kevin coach, and you know, but if someone else that watching this and you haven't seen Kevin coach, he really does, you know, give a damn about what he does, and he's very passionate about it, and so he is very relational, very outgoing, and so he does relate to the athletes. If Kevin is not here, they're like, oh man, we got Rose. Where's Kevin? How do you? And he's not here. Okay. Yeah, we see he's not here. Where is he? Well,
Call him.
Yeah,
Get
exactly.
him here.
Yeah.
That's
So he does have a different approach. And I think that that's important, you know, like, you know, you can't have everyone, you don't need to have everyone on your team that coach the way you do, right? Like, I mean, it's just, you know, and so, yeah, so obviously he does, you know, really
Love it.
love it.
I think
But I think, though, the motivation behind that question is very legit.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of coaches in any setting, from the gym to the clinic, to the school, to club, that do not love it like they say they do.
Yeah.
We know that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And they're ruining athletes' lives.
And their own. By lying to themselves.
Actually, you know, that's so true.
Yeah. It makes you bitter and resentful, and you know, that sucks.
Yeah, it does. I think that's something that my mandate is kind of like the personal challenge is that, I think I want to preserve the things that are really, really impactful for our field, and then progress those things that are not having much impact. And that is one thing that I would love to have more for us to have. I would love to leave it in some small way better than what, I found it personally.
For sure. Oh, yeah.
And so trying to help get those coaches, to see that, like, man, listen, if it's not working for you, no one's going to fault you, man, but like, you're going to hurt yourself, like you said, and also you're going to hurt the athletes that you're serving and our clientele that you're serving.
Yeah, it leaves a bitter taste in their mouth, and there's already enough bad sport coaches.
For sure.
Like, I think we've all had experiences with that.
Absolutely.
And bad experiences with, less than invested strength coaches or physical therapists, or whatever the case may be, kinesiologists. So, yeah, like, do the things you got to do in your personal life to make sure that you can show up and be present. And
so do you think that it really is about passion?
For some people.
Okay.
I think I cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for some individuals, I think like they hit the lottery and they get to do exactly what they want to do, and other people it's like, hey, you can still influence all of your patients or clients positively, even if you don't love what you're doing 100%. So, I mean, there's plenty of people who don't enjoy their job, but still do a good job.
Yeah.
Right? And they still understand, like, hey, if I don't do this well, then that affects my family, that affects my personal life, that affects my relationships, yada yada. So for some people, I consider myself one of those. Like, I feel like I hit the jackpot. Like,
right.
Like I get to hang out with people that I enjoy for the most part. And I get to do, every once in a while there's a client where you're just like, all right, this is my job. For everyone else, it's like, all right, this is awesome. You know what I mean? So, but even then, I'm like, all right, remember.
Since you don't have a ton of them.
Yeah, it's very few. That's what's so nice. Like, there's very few where I'm like, oh, I wish I was sitting in a cubicle at a desk. Like, I never have that feeling, so I consider myself blessed.
Did Camden stress you?
Camden? I don't remember who that is.
Yeah. Okay.
What's the next question?
Brady's friend. No. Brady's friend. 2 or 3 summers ago. It was 3 summers ago. And you know what? We're gonna handle this.
I got a short memory.
I bet you do. I bet it's probably about 3 in that short memory.
Yeah.
Okay, next question.
I honestly, I'm drawing a blank.
That's okay. I'm gonna remind you.
Okay.
When we eat dinner, I'm gonna remind you.
Okay. All right, next caller. What's your question?
Luke. Coach Luke.
Hi, Luke. Luke's been a guest on the podcast. Has he been a guest on your podcast, Coach?
Not yet. We're getting ready to do one.
Awesome. Look forward to listening to that one.
Yeah. Luke is super sharp.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Luke has two zingers.
Alrighty.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So number 1, how do you bridge the gap between school strength training and individualized private strength training?
How do you bridge the gap? That's a tough one. So probably in an ideal world, there wouldn't be a gap.
Hold on a second. Let's just address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
Just go straight head on it. Bust through the barriers on it and just go through it.
Shoot, Coach.
What are your dislikes and what are your likes?
With school strength and conditioning
All
programs.
right. Let's do it this way. Just highlight what you think 3 points school training, strength and conditioning training embodies.
Okay, it's cookie cutter. For one, there's absolutely no variation at all, individual variation. So the issue the primary issue I have with that is that everyone, even if you're playing the same sports, even if you're playing the same position, even if you have the same seemingly mechanics, like everybody's movement patterns are different. Everybody's what they're doing, the other 22 hours of the day that they're not at practice is going to be different, and what they're doing on the weekends is different when they're not playing sports. And all that to say, you have to have individualized training in order for each individual athlete to reach closer to their potential. So that's the primary problem I have. The second problem I have is the focus of the high school strength and conditioning. Like what's the outcome? Either there is no predetermined outcome where it's just like everybody lifts and you just do the lift, and it's like, okay, well what's the ultimate goal? What are we trying to achieve here? Are we trying to achieve increased power output? Are we trying to increase just overall strength? And if that's the case, like there's a lot of data that shows just because you're stronger doesn't mean there's any translation at all to athletic performance benefit or reduced risk of certain injuries. So what's the goal? Like, what are you going for here? Those are the two biggest issues I have that I would consider,
And so,
go on. Ball's in your court.
So, and then how do you classify private strength and conditioning, individualized private strength and conditioning?
Okay, well that's not clear cut necessarily either. So there's so much variation in what you can get with a personal trainer, a strength coach, an athletic performance coach, a speed coach, an agility coach, anything and everything in between. So hopefully a personal coach, whether it's a strength coach or sport coach, whatever the case may be, is trying to achieve a specific outcome. And the treatment or the training stresses that they're trying to apply have been shown to actually result in the desired outcome. So sometimes that doesn't happen because there's plenty of coaches who are like, oh, I do this and here's the outcome. And it's easy to say that. It's much harder to achieve that. So, yeah. What do you think, Coach?
Wow.
What's your elephant? It's Wednesday, my dude.
It is.
It's not an easy question. These are really good questions.
Right. And that's the situation.
Yeah, there's no simple answer here.
So here's how I think I want to approach my elephant. I feel like we're failing on both sides of the board. Actually, I really don't think that we necessarily have different sides of the board, but because of the politics associated with it, we have to create different sides of the board. Okay, so I believe that we're failing athletes on both accounts. I really do.
Yeah.
So whether you're a private, individualized strength training, because the thing that you pointed out is like we're like churches. You know, I mean, you're like, hey, you're denominational, you're non-denominational, you're Southern Baptist, you're Baptist, I mean, we just keep, you speak in tongues, you don't speak in tongues. You do this, you do that. You wear jeans to church, you don't wear jeans to church, right? Like, I mean, we start to cut into these things so much instead of seeing that, listen, here's how we need to approach this. Again, no matter how you cut it, how well laid out your program is, in school-based training, it is definitely cookie cutter. And not that that's necessarily a negative thing if you own up to it. And say, hey, listen, and so how I would like to present the, wait a minute, before I present a solution, right? Because I don't like to talk about problems without bringing a solution.
Yeah.
Right? When I was in the clinical setting, I always told my staff, listen, you can bitch about something. You can, see a problem, but if you bring a damn problem to me, you better bring a solution too. All right, so let me address my, elephants in the room, because that's what you specifically asked me. I think, a lot of school-based training are bullshit. Right? And here's why I feel like that. It's because when you feel as if what you do is greater than what anyone else does, then you become a tyrant. And so most of the time, high school ADs and strength and conditioning coaches want to become tyrants of their athletes. And when they do that, what happens is they don't have to even know you or myself or anyone like us that are in the private setting. And then what they say is like, oh, those guys don't need to do anything. Hey, don't go there. Those guys are gonna, get you hurt. Or hey, we're in season.
Don't waste your money.
Don't waste your money. You shouldn't have to pay extra for that. But that's really nice to say when you're already earning a paycheck. And also you have to remember, I'm in your zip code. I'm also helping pay for your salary through my property taxes. Okay, so or they'll say things as if, hey, I am a paid professional coach. Oh, okay. We get paid in Bitcoins, I guess. I guess that the shit that we earn is not really. It's
crypto.
Yeah, this shit doesn't even spin. Okay. Well, all right. I don't know how I'm gonna pay my property taxes to make sure your teacher's salary and benefits get paid. So I think what it is that there's too much of a division. And just like even in our Constitution, divided we stand, okay, or we don't stand, right? Like united we stand. Thank you for that. Good say. United we stand.
That's why I'm here.
Right, and then if we are divided, we don't stand. That's really the key issue there. And I think that and it's, I look at it as nomenclature starts to create that division. And so if my lexicon says, power training means this, okay, and your lexicon, you have it defined as something different, then because of that, we can't even get together and have a conversation because we're so divided in just terminology. And we may be closer than we believe, than we think in concepts and principles, but yet we just exclude each other. This guy, he said one wrong thing. He said one stupid thing. He said, and then no, I'm not going to listen to him. He doesn't know. He's not a good coach. How do you know that? How do you know that? You don't have a relationship, right? So anyway, I think that there are a couple challenges. So here's my solution. There are a couple challenges, and I'll run through these pretty quick. I think I'm gonna try. I think that we could do a podcast on this topic by itself. But
for sure.
All right. So points. I think that the setting in the school is not set up for there to be consistent training. Secondly, the competency and skill level, and this is not a negative or a dig toward a coach. It's just if you teach a subject, you teach a sport, you got a family. There's only so much time in a day. But training, what I think that most coaches don't realize in the school setting is that training evolves almost on a daily basis. The concepts of training and the application methodologies, and so you can't learn it in a 3-day weekend course one time a year in the summer, or you can't just learn it through YouTube practices and videos, and so that's not always evidence-based, credible resources. And so even if you watch a 6 or 7 minute video or a 3-minute video, that doesn't give you.
That's not continuing education.
That's not enough that's not enough, man, right? Like, so,
Yeah.
we're out here in these trenches learning concepts all day long, and so we could be a resource. And so anyway, I think that when you're talking about evaluation skills, there's no screening and evaluation component to what they do.
Yep.
You can say all day what you would like for athletes to represent, but what you're doing is you're looking at what the other schools or top athletes or what athletes you've had in a previous set. So really what I see is there's a general context to what coaches are doing at school, and that is phenomenal. Some is better than none. Not that general isn't good at all. Because ideally, right, what we want is in 7th and 8th grade, that's the first intro to strength and conditioning of some form and formalized training, right? So I think that has a huge value, right? And I think also what we have to understand is what private strength and conditioning coaches offer is development. So how you leverage that is if you are a school-based coach and you say, hey, listen, I have these 5 athletes that really need more development. We don't have time. You have 55 minutes. And then if you have, that's in the period, right? And then, by the time it, you get the lineup changed, all this stuff, you end up having 38 to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the only thing that you want to do is focus on behavior, and you want to destroy them through that second. So they're you kick their ass. We're gonna build some mental toughness. We're gonna make you strong and conditioned. And really, there's no formalized thought process to that segment.
Yeah.
Okay. One size fit all. We're gonna kick everybody's ass, and you're gonna be better because of it. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, okay? But from a general context, you will get what you just delivered. And so, ideally, if you see athletes that are struggling from and have these imbalances, right, which you probably can't point out a lot of times, you can just say, well, this kid's not that fast. This kid is fast. Everybody should be more like him or her. And so, what you should do is say, well, listen. Let's get them with a private coach. I know these 3 guys. Let's start to get you over here so we can get some development. Because the concept of strength and conditioning is to build strengths. Whatever those weak areas are or that present themselves, we have to build them up. If that's footwork, if that's balance, if that's whatever. Because from a neurological standpoint, you can only develop 1 or 2 things at a time. Yeah. Right? Yep. There's going to be a primary, there's going to be a secondary, right? Like you can't neurologically,
Can't be a broad
you
spectrum
cannot.
of different things that
you cannot.
The body can't adapt to everything.
No. So that's how I would look at it. General, hey man, there's nothing wrong with general, but on that's what it is. Yeah. And it's one size fit all. Hey, I'm doing what I think is best or what I see other coaches in the field doing. Or 5A schools do this, collegiate level schools do this. Yep. Hey, this is, because usually what happens is you'll have a strength and conditioning coach from a collegiate level come in and do the summer clinic for coaches. I'm like, okay. Or hey, Allen High School, they use performance course. Look at their program, okay? That's a very complex situation. That's not your situation. Those are not your athletes. Well, we're competing against them now. We're a 5A, 6A. Still, you just 2 years ago you were 4A. Right? And so, and the thing you don't realize is most of those kids have private coaches. That is a fact. So, anyway, but realize that there's 2 different things. What you deliver, if you deliver it to the best of your ability, that's awesome. But you do have time constraints and limitations, so it is very difficult for you. You're understaffed, you have way too many kids, and that's a ticking time bomb, and it usually explodes. And so what you have to try to do is to say, hey, listen, I'm going to get them over here. I'm going to find some guys. Don't just find someone in your area because they're there. Qualify them, get to know them, build a relationship, see the positives and negatives, and then say, hey, I want to send my kids there. Hey, you know what? No, I want to take and send my kids 2 cities over. and that would work better.
Yeah, that reminds me of there's a guy I follow on Instagram who he posts a lot about a specific class that he does in Dallas,
Mm-hmm.
and every single time he posts about it, he's like, "This is good for this. It's good for this. It's good for this. It's good for this. It's good for everything." And I'm like, okay, if it's good for everything, then it's probably good for nothing. So, like you said, you have to be able to qualify. Like, okay, what is this personal coach really good at? I have to know what they're good at so that when I see an athlete who's lacking in that area, I know to send them there.
Right.
But if they're not lacking in this
Do
area,
not send them
don't
there.
send them there.
Right.
So you got to know, like,
Yeah.
I try to be relatively aware of my strengths and weaknesses as a coach as far as what areas I can improve an athlete and what areas I'm lacking. Because if an athlete comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to do this better," hey man, I don't have any experience with that. If you
Right.
still want to train with me, I'll do my absolute best, but here's what I'm really good at.
Right.
And so if you're not aware of what those things are, or if you think you're good at everything,
Right.
then you're probably not.
Yeah, because you don't have to be. That's not what someone's asking you to do.
Yeah.
Say, hey, listen, that's just not my skill set.
Yeah.
You know, and that's okay, because you can't be good at everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think ideally what we start out in is, or where we start out is that we start out as generalists, and I think that's great. Be as broad as you can, because really, again, if you're 24 and 25, you do not know what you really have an interest in.
Yeah.
You can say, I think I want to do this, right? And especially now, see, when I started, 22 plus years ago, like, we didn't have but two options. You were in the gym, or you were going to be a strength coach at a university or some kind of organization like that, right? Those are the two options. But really, it was a personal training based model and logic.
Yep.
And so thankfully it's progressed, but unthankfully or unfortunately that now it's like, I mean, you can say, I just want to teach people how to do jumping jacks, and you can be a specialist at jumping jacks, and then you can tie in some research and data and say that jumping jacks has been found to make tennis players very efficient. What the fuck, bro? What? Seriously? I mean, that as silly and goofy as that sounds, that is exactly where we're at right now, right?
Yeah.
Because we have so much robustity out here, right?
A lot of robustity.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next zinger. All right, so again, Coach Luke, he's dialed in. Yes. All right, so when is it the correct time for an athlete to focus on an individual sport, or do you believe in multi-sport athletes? Now, that's 3 times the explosive TNT right there.
Yeah, this could be a long answer.
Correct.
Let's try to keep this one relatively short so we
Yes,
can
sir.
get some other callers.
Yeah, because we have some other callers.
Got some other callers.
Yeah.
So you want to hit this one first?
Chunk it down.
All right. So if I have to pick, let's say I'm a college coach, okay, and I have to pick, okay, do I pick an athlete who's only played one sport their entire high school career, or do I pick an athlete who's done multiple sports, but their stats, let's say, are exactly the same? I'm probably going to pick the athlete who's played multiple sports, because they're probably a little more resilient. They're probably a little less of a risk when it comes to overuse injury. They've probably been working a little more multi-planar. 3-dimensionally, they're using different movement patterns. They're using different motor skills. So they're probably able to move from an athletic standpoint probably a little better. Again, it's an individual, case by case scenario, but High school, I think, is a really good time to do as many sports as possible, with the exception of if you're not able to play multiple sports in college, and very, very few athletes are able to do that. How many professional athletes have done multiple sports? Like, very, very few, right? So that's like the extreme. But anyway, freshman, sophomore, maybe even junior year, as many sports as you can play, I think it's probably gonna, in general, it's probably a good idea to do that. When it gets down to the point where you've got to decide, okay, am I gonna play in college? What sport am I gonna play in college? I probably need to begin to like get a little more tunnel vision and focused in on that. So maybe junior, senior year, you start to narrow down your priorities with regards to what sports you're training, what activities you're doing that are going to benefit that. So if you're playing a sport every season and then you're only going to play, you know, a spring sport, then maybe you don't need to be risking potential injury playing a fall sport. So that's kind of how I would set that up personally. So
I like it. That's very concise. I was kind of me and Coach Luke were gonna do a podcast, and so that's kind of one of the topics that we're gonna cover in greater depth. But here's what's interesting is that I asked him, what I said to him was like, I said, hey man, that's a very simple question or simple answer. I like that. And what I was saying, obviously through text, is kind of hard to clarify what simple.
What was his answer?
His answer was, I like athletes to play multiple sports because they are highly adaptive.
Okay.
Which is.
That's a good answer.
I don't think that I could have formulated, that precise. And that's what I was saying. And so he's like, oh no, I can go into depth. I was like, oh no, I know for a fact you can.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and I think that we need to, let's jump on a podcast and so you can go into depth.
Yeah.
And I just want you to know, I wasn't saying that it was simple in the fact that like, oh, that's just like watered down.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not basic.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's not a basic, like, oh, you just tan all the time, right? Like, that's so basic.
It's not a Chloe answer.
You got it. Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to Chloe. Chloe from Lily. All right. But anyway, so like, but he worded that to fit the question. He knew that like, hey, I'm just giving you the answer that, because I think that is a premise that you can formulate and unpack really, really well.
Yeah.
And that's how he is. Like he's just no bullshit and just like, boom, here it is. Mm-hmm. Now I can go as deep as we want to on that, but that's where it needs to start. Yeah. And so I think that summed up exactly what you were saying on that. And so as far as my perspective on that, man, I've spent a lot of time thinking about that, and I will continue to spend a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah.
But just to sum it up so we can get to these other callers, I feel like, hey, fuck it, it all works. And what I'm saying by that is it's very, very simple and precise as I can personally get it, because I typically cannot. I need to get better at summing my shit. Right?
Remember when you promised Paula you weren't going to curse a single time?
No, here's what the deal was. Okay, I did.
And I told her I wasn't going to make that promise.
Exactly. So you did that. Had you constrained me, then I would have.
This podcast is listed as explicit. It doesn't bother me.
So listen.
If you don't like it, don't listen to it.
So
don't watch it.
Here's the deal. I think that at any given point, it all works, and here's why. It's so individualistic, and if I'm a college coach, and I see you without knowing your background, and if I see you and I don't know your background and I'm like, man, I really like that kid. I want to get to know that kid. That kid is the type of athlete that I'm at. Now I find out this kid's only played one sport. I'm not gonna get pissed off. You know what? I'm gonna sign her ass or his ass, whatever, right?
Yeah.
If I have a kid and say, oh, they played three different sports all through years, that's just a narrative. That's just a story.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, okay, great. Because here's the reality. Your ass ain't good in all three. You just playing three.
Yeah.
Right? You're good at one, which is the one I'm going to recruit you for.
Right.
And you won't even play those other two. Now, from a neurological standpoint and a development standpoint, yes, I think that is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I do agree with all those points that you laid out and what Coach Luke said about being highly adaptive. I think we know the evidence is overwhelming for those athletes that play multiple sports. They tend to have a more robustity in their neurological system and their movement patterns, right?
Yeah.
But you're opening the door to a lot of other things now. And then I think that you're closing the door on a lot of other things because now in this day and time, the time you spend away from your sport doing other sports, right, it's time that you could be spending working on the skill set to support your sport.
That's very, very true.
Okay?
That's very true.
So,
there's a lot of kids who wouldn't get college scholarships if they weren't playing just one sport, playing it for their school, playing it on a club team, playing it on a travel team.
Right.
If they were playing multiple sports, they'd be decent at all the sports. Maybe they'd play varsity on all the sports. They'd get no looks from college coaches.
No.
So
they're just a good athlete.
It's
just
tough.
all around. Yeah.
It's tough because, there's kids who are athletic enough and who maybe are doing some strength and conditioning with a really good coach who's making sure that they're not getting overuse injuries.
Correct.
And that's totally fine. Right? And then there's other athletes who maybe it would actually benefit them to play a few different sports to give them some time off, give them some rest, give them some opposite, let's say, skills that make them more well-rounded and make them more resilient. So it's
just depends on what type. Yeah, it's individualistic, and then it's about the story.
Yeah.
You get these stories where it's like, hey, this kid didn't play sports till his senior year, and he da-da-da, right? That's the story. Hey, this kid played all sports ever since he was 3. Okay, great. It's a story. Yeah. So it's primarily about that story. There's some positives and negatives for both scenarios, but at the end of the day, it's like, listen, I think you laid it out very well and said there is a time frame, usually that junior to senior year when you need to start to saying, okay, hey, listen, here's 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, you got to put
this
your
is
eggs
what I want.
More in one basket. That just reminded me. A couple years back, I think I showed it to you. There was a post. Somebody took a picture of a whiteboard in the locker room at Ohio State, and then it was just the coaches looking at the number of recruits that they had every year that were multi-sport athletes versus football-only athletes. Yeah. And I think they recruited like maybe 1 or 2 who only played football. And then I don't know how many recruits they had, 50, whatever the number was. The rest of them played multiple sports. It's like, okay, there you go. But it's like,
it's not that simple because
it's not.
Now, if we start to look at some of those who come from a low socioeconomic status, okay, that there are a lot of different things, okay? There might be the only positive environment that they need. So the more time they spend in sports, and less time they steal, over here stealing and robbing someone else and selling dope, right? It could be just that simple, right? Yeah. And then in other scenarios, it could be, hey, they're small town, okay? And there's a lot of pressure for small town schools and athletes to play multiple sports. Yeah. You don't have enough kids.
You don't have to try out.
Hey, listen, we don't care. We need to put you over here. Yeah. Hey, well, mom and dad and uncle and grandpa and Julie and whoever else, right, play these sports.
Can't forget Julie.
Yeah, for sure. They played all these multiple sports, right?
Yeah.
And so then because of that, hey, you know what? You
You're
need to do that.
expected.
You're the 16th generation, and we played all sports growing up, and it's like, you know what? Kiss some ass, man. Just go in over here and look. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm focused on this.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much different. It's just there's a different path now.
For sure.
Right now, you can do that path, but you don't have to necessarily do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at the evidence of saying, well, yeah, we got some high level. I don't know. If you're a very talented athlete, yes, you're going to have more opportunity to do more things.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily support or take away from your case if you do or don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And then one last point I will say is that if you are, there's always the exception. If you are an athlete and you are very underdeveloped, but you have a lot of heart and a lot of drive and a lot of determination and goal oriented, then you would be better off playing that one sport and then training really, really hard to develop the skill set to make you better at that thing, right? So I think it's really highly.
There's a lot of variables involved.
There's a lot of variables involved. Yes.
Yeah. I wish it was really simple.
Right.
But even with a simple answer, there's a lot of.
Yeah, and I think that's how most things are. It's like they're so much more complicated than what we assume. And I think logic says that it wants a black and white, straightforward, simple, nicely neat, bone wrapped answer.
Yeah.
And most of the time it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
If it's a simple question, yes,
Mm-hmm.
the answer is simple. But if it's a complex like that, then sure.
Yeah, there's no Twitter, however many characters answer to these kinds of questions.
For sure. All right, so Isaiah, who is a high school athlete, had a really good question. He goes, what is a coach's greatest fear when coming up and when it comes to training athletes? So what, as a coach, what is one of your greatest fears for training athletes?
Oh, that one's tough because early on, I'd say my greatest fear was, do I actually know what I'm doing? Like, it was a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like, do I deserve to be here? Like, am I good enough to do this? Now at this point, I'm not sure I have a ton of fears when it comes to training an athlete. Just because I feel like I've done it enough, and I'm studying enough, and I'm trying to ensure that I'm not doing anything outside the realm of what I know will be either effective or at least won't hurt them, let's say. So early on, I think in the back of my mind it was, okay, if I'm going to do something that I know is really, really difficult, will they get hurt? So, because it was kind of that perspective of, like, hey, you want results, you got to push them, and you got to risk to get some reward. And so now I don't think I have to risk as much to see results, just because I hope at least I understand the process a little bit better. And a lot of times it comes down to being more patient, just saying, hey, like, we can get some real-time results if we're training the nervous system correctly. But when it comes to these other variables that you want to see improvement, maybe it's going to take this amount of time, maybe it'll take this amount of time. And so early on, I think, in addition to risking potential injury, my fear was, can I get it done in the amount of time that the research says I should be able to get it done? Or can I deliver on any promise? Just because I think it was that whole imposter syndrome. So, not that I don't have fears now, but I think those are kind of the big ones that that were more legitimate fears instead of concerns, let's say.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's really good. Yeah, I think my fear today is the fear that I had 20 plus years ago, or I should say, um, technically day one. And, you know, am I competent enough?
Mm-hmm.
I'm always concerned about
Yeah.
my competency level.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me is a huge motivator and a driving force for me. And so, when you come through those doors, especially when injury is involved, training not so much, but we, one of the things I want to do is bring that clinical setting into the training setting to make it performance. So performance for me is being well-rounded.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I want to be competent enough. So that means that I can't never be satisfied with my skill set. And I don't, so that makes me obsessed about it,
Mm-hmm.
about my competency level.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because parents ask questions, they want to, really, here's the deal that any athlete that comes to you, adult or student athlete, is what they're really saying is, I'm trusting you with my dreams and my health and my performance and really my trust, right? So I need your help to get me to where I say I want to go. And I think that's a huge responsibility. And so, I want to be competent about the things that I say, the programs that I build, the modalities and treatments and therapies that I recommend.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that's what my biggest fear is. Not in the fear of like, hey, that makes me indecisive, because I am very aggressive, and so I do risk that biscuit.
Yeah.
I risk it for the biscuit, man.
Yeah.
And so I am aware what science time frames are, but then I'm like,
those are averages.
fuck that shit. I want to do my own thing, right? Because this person in front of me is a blank canvas, and this person is a blank canvas. And at the end of the day, those are basic guidelines. You don't have this individual in front of you.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
And so that's not always the safest parameter, but I've been able to achieve outcomes that blew the doors off because of that.
Yeah.
I've made some mistakes. And I've learned from those things, and so I think that I'm okay being in that situation. And so give you a cool story and an example of this. It's like Alabama, the University of Alabama created this procedure for addressing high ankle sprain. So I had a high school athlete, Garrett, who had a high ankle sprain on Friday. Tua had an high ankle sprain on Saturday. Tua was out 21 days. Garrett was out 13 days.
Wow.
Right? The next 2 weeks, Tua gets a severe injury, season-ending injury. Garrett continues on through the season, through playoffs, and so. And so we didn't do, obviously, I didn't do surgery because I'm not a surgery, or I didn't recommend it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the swelling aspect, which I won't go into details of that, but which we probably need to talk about. Pain, swelling, injury modalities for the ankle specifically. That would be a good topic for us to have a discussion on at one point. But it 13 days for Garrett, and 21 days basically for Tua, man. That was like a huge difference. And actually, even for a surgical procedure, the reason why they developed the tightrope procedure at the University of Alabama is because they are progressive and in their thought process.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, they want to get those athletes back on the field.
they have to.
Yeah.
Right.
And not just, okay, we don't think you're going to get injured again.
Yeah.
But like, no, you're back to 100%. You're good to go.
But in that setting, that is very aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
That's risking it for the biscuit. You know what I'm saying? And so, again, if I say, you know, because actually a high ankle sprain is probably one of the most severe ankle sprains that you can have, just because of the magnitude and the ligaments and joints that are covered, versus a low ankle sprain. And so, obviously, you know, what science, the scientific evidence and data states is that, hey, you know, it's 3 to 5 weeks is when you're gonna be at.
Wow.
With a boot.
Shoot.
And I'm like, I don't boot them. I don't care about that swelling, right? Anyway, that's not a topic, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So I but that's an example of the competency level that I'm very sensitive to and very aware of, that I want to just push it, you know. So, and so, you know, like for instance, like, you know, having there's a fear factor for me. Hey, I don't, you know, I'm going to go through every procedure that I can go to make sure that this athlete doesn't need x-rays, and that, hey, they have there's a grapefruit sitting out here on the outside of their ankle, right, in the form of swelling, and yet I'm saying, no, there isn't a fracture, and no, we don't need x-rays, and yes, we're going to get them back in hopefully 7 days or 10.
Yeah.
Right. So,
you're not just saying that, you're doing your due diligence to
yes,
check those things off to make sure, like.
Yes, but on some of those athletes, there's some that I sleep really good at night, and then there's some, like Garrett is one, you know, because there was so much instability and there was clicking and popping, right? Which obviously means there's very little ligamentous stability going on, right?
Yeah.
So I have some sleepless nights, but when I'm in front of the parent and the athlete, that's not for them to see, because, you know, and again, this is not being me trying to conceal or you know, I'm going through the clinical analysis of what I believe is going on, and if I have very little confidence, then the family has very little confidence. You know, even though in my mind I might have some internal dialogue, which in that particular case that I did. And most of my lower ankle sprains, I've become so competent at it that there's very little fear factor, sleepless nights associated with that. Yeah. High ankle sprains have a lot more degree of difficulty, and I tend to have, in those scenarios, sleepless nights. And very few ACLs. At this point, I'm at 150 plus, so there's very few ACL cases and repairs that I have sleepless nights. So with lower ankle injuries, I have far more, you know, outcomes than that. And with high ankle sprains, I'm still working my way through my process. Yeah. You know, and so what my fear comes in, again, at a higher level and cause me not to sleep, is not because I feel like I'm going to fail at something. I want to make sure that, hey, have I done everything that I'm supposed to and capable of doing at the highest level I can, to make sure I've given good advice. You know? Yeah. But and then on the other hand, I'm pissed off at the injury factors because you're not responding at the level that I want you to. Now, part of that might be a little ego. Yeah. And
are you like yelling at the ankle?
Oh,
Adapt.
Yeah.
Adapt. Dang it.
Oh yeah. I'm having a lot of dialogue. Sometimes parents ask me a question and I'm just totally zoned out on their ass, right? Because I'm in it, and I'll tell them, hey, listen, save your questions. I'll get it, but right now I got to be dialed in, right? Because this motherfucker is trying to punch me in the face, and I'm bobbing and weaving, right? Yeah. You know, because I mean, you see that amount of swelling and the instability on the joint, right? And you're like, hey, we're very borderline. You know, the simple thing to do is to put that some bitch in the boot and send their ass on the way and tell them, hey, have a good 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We'll come back and check it. You know what? Pay me my co-pay. You know what? Hey, come back here and check. Oh no, that shit's still popping. 2 more weeks. See you in the boot. Pay me my co-pay.
Yeah.
That would be the simple thing to do.
Yeah.
Or safe thing to do, right?
Yeah. No fear there.
No fear there. Hey, I can do that shit all day long.
Yeah. But no reward.
No biscuit.
No. Shoot, I hear that.
All right, so what
else we got?
Isaiah's second question is, what keeps a coach motivated throughout his or her career?
Well, I don't think you'd get into it if you didn't want to see your athletes achieve. So if you're not getting any results, then you're probably not going to be in this industry very long. Like, I think the people who aren't successful in their endeavors, as far as coaching goes, they find something else to do. Like, part of that, I think, is because people just are going to stop coming to you. They're just going to stop using you as a source of information and as a tool to help their to help achieve the things that they want. So it definitely helps if you're, like you said, staying on the cutting edge of your competency level and pushing the envelope where you can and learning as much as you can, and staying sharp, because you're going to get good results, and you know, that external reward of being able to see your athletes, you know, have a really good game, have a really good, you know, competition. You know, if they do end up going and playing at the collegiate level or further on, whatever the case may be. Like, I love seeing my athletes get PRs and play really well. I love that. So that helps keep me motivated. I'd say that's the big one, is like, the reason I'm doing this is because I love interacting with people. And so the other aspect of that, the part that keeps me motivated, is I get to interact with people. Like, it's motivating for me to learn new things about my clients and to get to know them better.
I think that's huge, yeah.
And it's not a superficial level. Like, you know, I don't get deep with everybody right away. Like, sometimes it takes a while. You know, I've had a client for, he's one of the first clients that you kind of handed over to me. And it wasn't until 3+ years into training twice a week where he was able to say, hey, here's what's going on in my life right now. And, you know, it took us that long before he trusted me enough to where he knew, like, hey man, I'm going to listen to you. I'm not going to judge you, and I'm not going to judge your situation, and I'm going to try to offer advice if I can. And if I can't, then I won't. But you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Or you probably do. You have some ideas.
Of who you talking about?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I do. I have an idea of who I think it is. Yeah, but I'm laughing about that. That's so true. And, you know, I think that this is another one of those hidden factors that coaches don't really understand, is that, you know, part of, you know, I think ideally, when we get into this field, we think it's all about these exercises that you have. And that's probably like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 down on the list of what you actually do. You get what I'm saying? See?
Yes.
And so, you know, the main thing that you do is that you're a mender. And if you're very good at listening, right, you have that therapist aspect. And so when you involve that element to where, hey, what happens in this session stays in this session, there's a lot of privacy, and you hold that to a very high standard, your clients understand that, and they feel like they're safe with you.
Yes.
And when they're safe with you, then they can become strong with you.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and the way you know that is because your retention ratio is high, right?
Yep.
Right. Most coaches don't have the clients for 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 years.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
that blows my mind. That clients that you handed over to me, or that I, inherited when we started back in 2012. Like, I still have a lot of them.
Yeah,
like a lot of them.
And they were with me when I started in 05.
It's crazy,
right? And then they're referring friends, and it's just, people will not pass out a personal reference if they don't believe in your ass, right? Like they will not do that.
Yep.
Because that meant, which rightly so. You told me to go see this bastard, and now he's, doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Putting rocks and hot stones and shit on my back when I got my head turned. I told him one thing, and he told 16 different people, right?
Yeah.
Like, that type of shit. Like, man, that's you don't do that. That's sacrilegious, right? So,
Yeah. Retention.
Yeah.
Is motivating for me.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
it is. Because it's a slow, steady game.
Yeah.
And they will become diehards for you.
Yeah. And the people that they refer tend to be the
just
same,
like that.
Right. People.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that says a lot. To me, that's a healthy practice that you build, and I think that's one of the things. That's kind of something that my attorney, taught me, Darren. He's like, listen, you have to have a sticky back door. No lie, he's Jewish, bro. I mean,
I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but
yes, it has everything.
Continue.
It has everything
Explain.
to do. Hey,
I'd love to understand.
Bro, these Jews, you already know. They know. Yeah. They understand business, logic, finance, real estate. Hey, man, listen. If a Jewish person tells you something, you better go for it, bro. Like, so this is what he told me. He set me down. He's like, listen.
Go on.
It's like, you got to have a sticky back door. I was like, damn, bro, I'm gonna need you to elaborate on that.
Yes, please.
And what he was saying was, it doesn't matter how many new clients you get in.
Yeah.
If they're running out the back door as fast as you get them in, you got to close that back door because so the logic is for business is the bloodline of your business, which this is actually a true statement, but there's a semicolon. The sticky back door. So he said, you can get the bloodline. Well, hold on, let me give you the principle. The bloodline to every business is new business. Okay, so that's the front door.
Yeah.
You got to have new people coming through your front door.
Yep.
And then he said, but the semicolon to that is it doesn't matter how many new ones you're getting if they're constantly leaving.
Yeah.
So
it's a revolving door.
It's a revolving door, right? Yeah. So you're working twice as hard to go out and get new clients. Yeah. And so he says, listen, you get them in through the front door, but then you got to close that back door, right? So you think about it like a fly coming in, right? You own fly paper, right? You get them in, they come in, they stick with you. That's called retention. Yeah. They're not leaving a lot or really quick. And so, then he taught me a principle. There are 3 things to make a healthy business, right? So obviously that's one, but he's like, hey, retention is number 1. Second thing is, when you have someone, when you have someone with you, you either charge them more money. That's another way to grow your business, or you offer new services or a new form of service that they can continue to spend money with you, right? So that's increasing the value of what that client is. So those are the 3 things, man. He's Jewish, man. So he was my attorney,
some solid
right?
advice.
But he was giving me business advice. He's like, look, hey, based on what you're doing right now, you ain't gonna make it. It's like,
wow.
Okay, yeah, oh yeah, straightforward, just like, and he was true. He was true, right?
That reminds me of something I actually learned from The Office.
Oh, tell me about that.
So the character Ryan, he's in business school, and he's actually quizzing his boss, Michael, who never went to even college. And he asked him, like, what costs more to find a new client or to retain a client? And Michael's like, oh, it costs the same. He was like, no, it actually costs 10 times more to get a new client than it does to retain clients. So, yeah, at the end of the day, like, you've got to be good at keeping them around. Otherwise, what service are you providing?
Well, that was one of the things I was trying to teach Ed about. Okay, so you can get all jazzed up and excited about the new person, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like having a new girlfriend, right? You can get all excited about a new girlfriend, but to have longevity with your girlfriend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you know,
Takes some effort.
That takes some effort.
Yeah,
You got to go a little bit deeper into the well, man. Like you
Yep.
got to, like that whole cupcake phase isn't there anymore,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so how do you again work with them for a sustainable amount of time? And so that takes getting to know them more,
Mm-hmm.
and more trust, helping them hit PRs and goals, and so one of the things that people don't realize is that part of the relationship once it transitions. At first you're front loading, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then after the longer it goes on, they start adding to your life because they start to get to know you now.
Yeah.
Right? They start to know your tendencies. They start to know what, your likes and dislikes. They can read your moods, all these things, right? You're hanging out outside of work, all these little things. And then they can start to say, hey, Kevin, you know what? This is what I think that you can benefit. I'm going to put you in touch with someone else. Or if you're having a bad day, you might be more open to say, and this is a tricky situation, but they might be able to say, hey, Kevin, you know what, man, here's some advice. You do what you want with it or whatever. Mm-hmm. It becomes a very healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And I think people outside of this dynamic don't understand, sometimes the depth of it, of what it can be, so it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Yep. I think we got one more caller on the line.
One more caller, Cass.
We got time for one more question. Maybe
She's
two.
Okay.
We'll keep them short.
Okay.
I know she probably's got a lot to say.
Well, she has 3 questions, but I'll read them out and you pick which one you want to do.
You know what? Ask them all. We'll roll it.
All right. So, what is a major difference in your coaching style versus the coaches that coached you or that you were used to being coached by?
Gotcha.
Okay.
I'll just cover that one real quick. Well, a lot of, I think, the good things about how I coach, I learned from my previous coaches. Like you said, holding on to what's good in our profession and then progressing what's lacking. Like a lot of, I think that I have that makes me a good coach. I think I learned from my coaches, my high school and college coaches. I think one of the things that I do differently than some of the coaches I had is I tried to also, like you said, try to be as competent as possible. Mm-hmm. Try to learn as much as I can, try to progress things as much as I can. Be aggressive where I know I'm capable, mm-hmm. and then not try to assume I know everything in areas that I'm not able to do that. And so I think I've had coaches who were a little more sure of themselves than they should have been. Mm-hmm. And then other coaches who weren't as active when it comes to learning as much as they could. So I think that's probably the biggest difference is I try as much as I can to stay
up to date.
Yes, stay in my lane with what I know really well, but then also,
push the boundaries of that lane.
For sure, definitely.
Very cool. All right, so our second question. I'm gonna go to the third one. I'm gonna leave you on. I'm gonna leave you on the zinger because it's a good one.
Okay.
All right. So number 3. What is one way that you help your athletes to overcome, or you assist them for overcoming like mental hurdles?
So a lot of my clients are endurance athletes, and success in endurance athletics and endurance sports is very, very, very dependent on how mentally tough you are. So,
boy, that's no lie.
like you can't fake being mentally strong in a marathon or in an Ironman. Like,
yeah, you just quit.
Yeah. So, with a lot of my clients who have some hang-ups there, it's, you all right?
Oh yeah.
It's reminding them what they're capable of.
Okay.
And sometimes I have to do that often. Just say, hey, like, yeah, it's gonna be tough. Training's already tough.
Right.
It's not gonna be anything different. So, oh well, I'm not gonna be able to do it. I'm not gonna be able to finish. I'm not gonna be able to hit my goal time. Like, okay, first, yeah, you're right. If that's the way you're thinking.
Right.
Like, so you can think that way, and like, why even bother starting? Or look at what you're doing. Look at what you're capable of. Look at how much progress we've made. So
I think that's a huge one too, is helping them to see how much progress they've made.
Yeah.
Because that says, hey, listen, you can rely on the preparation that you've done. So.
For sure. And then one thing that I've used previously, I don't know how effective this is, but I'll say, like, do you think that I'm the kind of person who would take your money just because I want your money? Or do you think that I'm actually invested in helping you achieve this? Like, am I the kind of person who would just tell you whatever you want to hear just so that you continue to train with me?
So you take the emotion out of it at that point because they're trying to give you a little bit of emotion.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, for some people, they're like, oh, okay. Because I'll just straight up say, like, I'm not going to waste my time on people that I don't think are going to be able to achieve this. Like, you can go to somebody else and pay them to lie to you. So if I don't think you can do it, I'll tell you that. But if I think you can do it, then I'm going to, whatever percentage that I have to be involved in this, it's not 50% because you as the athlete have to put in more than that. But the percentage that I have to do, I'm going to give 100% of that. And I think letting the client know, like, hey, I'm 100% invested in this, can be a useful tool to help them understand, like, oh, okay, like, yeah, like, here's where I'm having hang-ups. Maybe it's an issue with me. Maybe I don't trust the coach enough. Like, no, hey, like, you can trust me. And then
I'm not.
If that's the issue, then it's, oh, okay, all right, then. And then the other thing is, sometimes it's an issue with, hey, I'm not progressing as fast as I want, so I'm not seeing progress. I'm not feeling better.
So you have to reframe what type of progress they actually having.
For sure.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but even then it's like, hey, but look how much progress we've made. Here's the time frame that we've had. Is it realistic to think that you're going to be 100% better in this amount of time? Like, no. So let's step back, try to look at things as objectively as possible. And that's really tough to do, especially when you're in pain. But, so yeah, that's essentially how I try to work with mental hang-ups.
That's very good. Before we get to this third question, we have another college athlete with a call in, and I'm going to give you the question, and then I'm going to take a short break to Launchpad, our sponsor for tonight, which is 1835.
Yes.
And
yeah.
so
Couldn't have done it without them.
couldn't have done it without him. So Peyton asked some very good questions, but I'm just give you one because yes, exactly. He goes, "What was the moment you knew you wanted to start coaching?"
Oh man.
Oh, that's a good one.
The moment I knew, I was probably in high school. I knew relatively early that I wanted to work with athletes in some capacity. I didn't know. I think you gave me a little extra there. I didn't know exactly in what capacity.
That's a little watered down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I thought I was going to be a distance running coach. I thought I was going to be a college cross country and track coach. I didn't know that I was going to. Oh, there you go. Yeah, like a bartender up in here. High school, I knew I was going to be working with athletes. Halfway through college, I knew I was going to be working with endurance athletes for sure. And then in grad school, I knew this was what I was going to be doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was the alternative?
The alternative?
Because I can't see Coach Kevin as anything else, but I mean, it's what was there anything else? Teaching.
Yeah.
Was that Becky's influence?
Probably. Yeah. And my dad also was like, I can see you as a college professor.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Now,
it's not off the table.
To me, that still is the same. So I don't see that as reaching as something different. So yeah, I can totally see you as, Dr. Hey, get Dr. Coon in here. Take Dr. Coon's class. Hey, have you been to Dr. Coon? Go see Dr. Coon.
Go see Ambrose. Go see Dr. Coon.
I got a meeting with Dr. Coon.
Yeah, so that
or you could call it, come to Dr. Coon's treehouse.
I don't have a treehouse.
But you see the significance of that, though?
No.
Like, when's the last time you had wolf grain chili?
I don't think I've ever had it. My uncle worked
Get a rope.
for Hormel, so I think that would have been inappropriate.
No, seriously, it's totally not inappropriate.
Okay.
It's actually inappropriate. It's totally
inappropriate.
Yeah, it's totally not inappropriate. Here's why. Wood brand chili, I love their commercial. It's like,
they got some
when's the last time you had wood brand chili? They're like, I don't know. Well, that's too long. You know what? Get a rope. Right? They were like, they were gonna hang you because they were cowboys.
Yeah.
Set out on a trail, and it was like, hey, you did something that was non-cowboy standard. We're gonna hang your ass. Just get a rope, right?
Damn.
Right. So then you move that forward to hanging coons, and then go see the coon in the treehouse.
That went way over my head.
Okay.
I'm glad you took the time to explain that. To
But
not only me, I'm sure there's other people who needed to hear that.
Yeah. But we're about at the end, so it's okay to say offensive things at the end.
Coming to a close.
Technically, it's not offensive at all, because you are a coon.
I am.
Exactly. All right. So
100%.
100%. Third and final question.
I've never been anything else.
Word. I don't doubt that. All right, so Cass, I mean, with these deliciously complicated questions, she closes us out. She brings us to the crescendo.
Okay.
All right, so why is there a double standard for women coaches? Your ass better not skip this. Why is there a double standard for women coaches versus men?
How so?
Whoa.
Please explain.
Whoa. There's more.
Yeah.
And she gives some context.
Yes.
When women coaches it always, with women coaches, it always seems to be that they're young and fit, while male coaches can be overweight, elderly, etc., and still be accepted by the coaching community.
So,
woo!
So-
There's a lot in there.
if you're a female coach, you got to be hot, and if you're a male coach, you can be a slut.
A not.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
can be a hot or a not.
Why is that double standard? Like part of me,
Wait. Is there some legitimacy right there?
like at least from the surface level, I can understand that because I've seen that.
So what you're saying is the old.
I've been to coaching conferences, so I've seen it.
Okay. So what you're saying is that the overweight elderly coach will hire the young, fit, young female coach.
Maybe not always, but I've seen that too. Why is that double standard there?
Well,
This is a
legitimate.
very complex issue that
Hey,
I don't
approach it
have-
how you want to.
I don't have all the information to answer that. I don't
Okay.
have all the data.
Okay.
How important is the data to answer a question, Coach?
It's very.
It's dope, is what it is. If you aren't watching the YouTube version of this, then forgive us. Coach Ambrose is wearing a t-shirt that says data. Dope. So, being data driven, it's hard to answer this question. However, I can appreciate the question because
Okay.
unfortunately in the industry there is a bit of a double standard. When it comes to strength coaches, you can be older and overweight, and as long as you yell like a strength coach, people are gonna respect you.
Whoa, bro. You just okay.
Stereotypes. We're
Okay,
going stereotypical.
Okay,
right now.
listen. You just opened another door though.
I should.
Okay, so if you look at college football, right? Now, college football strength and conditioning coaches right now, these motherfuckers are out of control. Okay, so what you, based on what you just said, you're really reducing, right, the window to a strength and conditioning college football coach.
Yeah, that's true.
These motherfuckers dancing on TV and twerking and shit and
Yep.
headbutting people and shit like that. And
You remember that dude who? There's that.
yeah,
The curly mustache.
Yeah.
The dude who is he the Browns strength coach? Who's like, I don't think he's ever lifted a weight.
Right.
But he's talking about how one of the athletes was like, "Hey, coach, I got a question about stretching," and he's like, "Stretching? You think they did some stretching before they stormed Normandy?" Those guys weighed like 135 pounds.
Yeah. Most of them were 17.
Yeah, and they were not high-level athletes.
No.
And
Courageous,
strategy for sure.
but athletes.
No, different thing.
Right.
So this is a really tough one. When we read this earlier, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. When we read this earlier, I said I was gonna pass on it.
He did. That's why I said
It's heated.
I said do not skip.
It's heated.
Yeah.
It's a heated issue.
Now Kevin is not
I'm not trying
confrontational.
to be PC here.
No, he's not.
I'm just trying to say
It is a very tricky.
you can't answer
Yeah,
it
it's very tricky.
in 10
But
seconds. or less.
here's the deal though. Let's here's
What do you have to say, Coach?
oh, nice deflect.
You know who I'd love to hear answer this question?
Who?
Cass herself.
Oh, that would be. You know what? We will have to set that up because you know she will, right? You know she will.
Yeah.
Well, here's one of the things. When you talk about budgets, okay. So one thing that you can look at is you won't have most of the time at a lower level collegiate. I wouldn't even say lower level. Let's just say at the collegiate level, most of the time, if you are a non-established credible coach, whether male and or female, right? Because if you just recently finished competing, you're going to be pretty fit, whether male or female.
Yep.
Okay, so that's there. Now, in what she said, specifically talking about the female. Okay, that's a separate situation. So the female young fit coach, I could pay her $28,995, right? And I can have her, and say, hey, I'll offer you a master's program plus, maybe give you a lunch pass and then pay you $29,000 a year to coach. Well, yeah, she's going to be the one that raise her hand and sign for the job.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's that. Secondly, okay. Now let's talk about optics. Now we're not excluding whether she's qualified, non-qualified. We're just talking about one specific data point. Dope. Right? Just the optics. If she is a young, fit, recently, maybe still, most likely highly still training female athlete coach, she comes and sit down in your living room to recruit you, what are you going to feel like? As a female athlete looking for other female role models. I'm going to sign with you.
Yeah, I would.
Versus if I get a butch, out of shape, elderly, older, why you... Don't do that. You put me out here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say, female coach. Which one would you probably sign with?
Probably the one who looks more the part.
Okay, so that's that.
With regards to
just one perspective.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. You look like you just got finished playing. That's probably who I go with.
And that's kind of across the board. But we're talking about specifically track and field because she's a track and field and cross country athlete.
Yep, that's who I would go with.
Okay.
Yep.
So if I am the overweight elderly coach who hired her,
obese, was that in there too?
No.
Just overweight.
Overweight.
Okay.
Yeah. Overweight elderly coach.
Okay.
Right. Yes, I will say theoretically there probably is a double standard. Probably because of a couple things. One, so budget cuts and that's one dynamic, right? And again, I'm not saying for and against on anything, but this just laying out the thoughts. And then the other thing is, as you get older for a male, you're like, hey, screw it, man, whatever, right? And typically a female probably wouldn't say that until, she gets up into, 45, 46, 47, 48. And then she may or may not be into that, on the circuit, for the most part. Now, the other thing that we got to say too is that, coaching from a recruiting standpoint and being out on the road and, all that, that's a young man's game, right? Or a young woman's game.
Yeah.
Right? So,
younger is definitely
right. So you don't have a mortgage, you don't have, car payments, your dad, if you're a young
your
female,
kids' tuition.
Yeah, you don't have 2.3 kids and a dog that you got to board and all these different things like that. And so, your dad might still be paying your car insurance at that point if you're a young fit coach. And so there's all kind of, little scenarios. But I think, if we're talking about strictly budgets, from a D1 to a lower level collegiate level, and if you're at a high level college level, right? The other thing too is I can get you for a cheaper rate because you don't have a name, you don't have an experience
isn't there.
Right. Now, if you are an overweight elderly coach, right? But then your competency level is kind of, in your body of work, not your physical
body,
right? But your body of work of training athletes and development prodigies are sustainable and recordable and validated. You might get a few passes, so you can say, yeah, I'm plump, but you know what? These athletes perform well. So, there's
it's complex.
And again, it's complex. I'm not saying for or against or anything like that, but
Yeah.
yes, that is a noticeable or observable point.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, right? Attractive people tend to get hired more than unattractive people.
That's true.
Right? So you may say that this
Yeah.
elderly, overweight guy, he may have been at that university for 10 years.
He may have been hot 10 years ago.
Yeah, and
he may have just let himself go as soon as he got the job.
And then the other thing that we're not leveraging is that, this guy might be linked in with relationship connections and different things like that. So,
former athlete.
Yeah,
there.
you have more opportunity the longer you have been in your career. And so, so I'm not saying that the double standard doesn't exist, because there is definitely a double standard. The reasons why, they're very, very monumentous, right? Like we can list out a couple of them. As far as if they are a stance or this right, wrong, good or bad, and we probably want to skip that.
I would agree.
Okay.
And on that note, thank you all for tuning in to the Athlete Factors Thanksgiving special.
Boom.
Join us next time. Maybe for a Christmas special. Maybe for a New Year special. I don't know. Maybe next year for another Thanksgiving special.
This guy. Coach Kevin. Wait. Coach Coon. Professor Coon.
One day. Maybe one day. Dr. Coon. We'll see.
Whoa.
Only time.
Hold on a second.
When I say maybe, I mean definitely.
That's awesome. I like that, but that's not where I was going, because it's Wednesday, my dude. What's Becky's last name? She's still under the
Dr.
Coon.
Coon.
She's still under the Coon? Well,
She beat me to it.
She did.
Yep.
You let your mom beat you too.
Well, she's not done yet, but she's
no,
there.
bro. She's there.
Gonna beat me
she's
to
there.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
proud of you, Mom.
So yes, Becky, and should I not? Don't do it. Okay.
Now's not a good time.
Okay. Hugs, Becky.
Don't think about it.
Just do it.
I'm telling you, don't think about it.
Oh, yes. Brain up high, Becky. All right, so who, once you do become, PhD'd, when you say, hey, Dr. Coon, who does Becky respond yes? Or do you respond yes? How do y'all address that?
I think we'll both respond.
No, I think y'all need a differentiation.
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I mean, she'll definitely have seniority, so.
Because she's not
there first.
Because she's not young, fit, and hot.
What are you trying to say about my mom?
I mean,
you don't think she's hot?
No, what I was about to say is Becky has some sex appeal. I was just talking about this whole thing right here. Kevin, you asked.
I hope that my battery's already dead and that it stopped recording.
It probably won't be. Listen. I was going off of this.
I hear ya.
Okay.
I hear ya.
We can talk about Becky offline.
We probably won't.
I'm just kidding, Becky. We're not. But you do have some.
She's not gonna listen to this, so
it's okay.
Alrighty.
Even if she.
And
done.
Tune in next time. Scene. Cut. Thank y'all for watching and listening. Tune into our episode next week. Deuces.
By the way, for the record, we did not get to, we had like 3 other athletes. We did not even get to all the questions, but this was way more than what he wanted.
Christmas and New Year's special.
Nice.
See you then.